Tom, Ben, welcome back to the show.
Hello.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, so it's funny, we just recorded a podcast before having you guys on, and we were talking about you guys and how we love all the sponsors we work with. We believe in the products and the people, but you guys have been the most rewarding by far. Just to hear back from, Tom and I will be in contact, and he'll, with, of course, permission, will talk to me about people that have come through us and kind of what their struggle is, and often sometimes you'll ask me to make a video for them. It's just so rewarding to hear stuff like that. So I'd love to hear about how that's been going since we started working together. Are you seeing people or able to help people through that?
Yeah, I mean, it's been pretty impactful in a way that, like, we, going into this, we were kind of, I think I could speak for all of us, pretty blind in knowing how this was going to work out. And, the people that have reached out, I think, they listen to Mind Pump thinking, it's fitness, nutrition, overall health, weight training, stuff like that. And then to come across somebody like us, and them actually reach out, 90% of the conversations that I've had with people are family members and loved ones. And they're absolutely clueless on what to do. And so being able to go and have those conversations with these people and actually reinstill to them that, like, there's hope in this, because a lot of them are like, we're really just reaching out because we don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And in fact, we think that they're in a hopeless state, And so being able to talk with them and really, encourage them that there's a silver lining to all this. You don't see it now. I know you don't see it now, but there is, and you just have to trust us. And we've gotten to have, some scholarships come in, and, we had Mark come in, and Ben can elaborate on that one. We had another young guy come in that he did okay, but, he's kind of on the fence, but he's young. But you know what we did? We planted seeds. He knows he knows what's there. He knows the opportunities. And we have a guy coming next week that he is in end-stage liver failure, and he needs 6 months sober to get a liver transplant. And I just talked to him yesterday, and he's going into detox next Tuesday. And he doesn't have 2 nickels to rub together. And it was like one of those things, and I called Ben. I'm like, for whatever reason, like a God thing, it was like I'm just being like this is the guy, 42, I want to say, young guy. So he's coming into detox, and I told him, he was like, how long can I stay with you? I said, how long do you need to get on the liver transplant list? He said 6 months. I said, you got 6 months.
Wow.
That's cool.
That's great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
So the medical system won't even let you do like a liver transplant.
Of course not. It's like wasting a good liver.
Yeah. And, I recently did an interview. It hasn't released yet for our podcast, Real Recovery Talk. And he's a firefighter, and his name is Matty. He's on Instagram as Matty the Goonie. He's a punk rock, like born and raised in South Florida. And his story was he had esophageal hemorrhages 4 times, liver failure, yada, yada, yada. And he ended up getting a liver transplant 3 years ago, and he's back on the fire truck. He's back working for Fort Lauderdale Fire Rescue, like crushing life now. And the funny thing about that is, and I asked him in the episode, are you grateful for all that stuff? Yes, because that's the thing. When we go through this, myself and Ben sitting here, like we've gone through all this stuff, all the stuff that addiction does to us, and we're grateful for it, But yeah, he had to wait 6 months. In fact, he opted out of the liver transplant, but it was like his fire chief and like the medical director, he was on his deathbed. He was in hospice, and they said, we're going to give you one last chance to get a liver. And he was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. And they were like, you have to take a test to see if you qualify. This test takes 6 months. He did this test in 4 days, and he ended up getting the liver, and he's good now. But yes, you do have to wait 6 months to get it.
Is that a part of the success? Is at the end of that initial journey, looking back and being like, I'm grateful I went through that?
Absolutely, because if we can come over alcoholism and addiction, like I'm really good at just about everything in life that I put my mind to. Alcoholics and addicts are some of the most talented, gifted people, intelligent people you'll ever come across. This is the one thing, I'll speak for myself, but I hear it from thousands of others. This is the one thing that we had to like completely surrender. We can't do this alone. But once we overcome that, and like for me, like I can sit here and tell you today, I haven't craved a drink or a drug in probably 14 years. I'm nearly 15 years sober. Like it's literally like all of a sudden I went from a guy who jammed a needle in my arm 15 to 50 times a day. I couldn't not do it. And all of a sudden, like it's just the problem's been removed. It's the wildest thing, but going through that journey and having to take a hard look at the truth about yourself, who am I really? And accepting that truth and then saying, this needs to change. That I always explain it like this. Thank God I crossed that line, right? If there's a line, so many people throughout life ride right under the line of misery. I was fortunate enough to cross it, right? And because of that almost forced change, if you will, like that's what makes me grateful for going through everything that we've gone through. And like the reason that we keep doing this, like when you were talking about, we didn't know what to expect going into this, and we get what a lot of times, what we do for work is hard, man.
I can't imagine.
We get what's referred to as compassion fatigue. Yeah. Like you keep plugging away. I'm going to call it what it is, man. We hear a lot of really sad stories. Know some of them personally. But like, for instance, 2 weeks ago, I got a phone call from the guy, Mark. He was the first scholarship we did. Yeah. He called me from Georgia, just ecstatic. I've never heard his voice. I'm like starting to tear up talking about it. I've never heard his voice and the tone that it was. He was so full of joy and happiness and purpose. And he said, Ben, I had to pick up the phone and tell you how amazing things are going. This guy, and he explained to us like his journey through, he was a Mind Pump listener, hadn't listened to you guys for months, right? And he was a line cook. And one day he's cooking food in the kitchen, making $15 an hour. He's like, I put on this episode, and that's when he heard you guys talking about us. And he made a decision to come to us. He ended up actually staying with us for 9 months. And he just stayed the course. He's like, there's times when we're like, we're going to go home. We're going to, venture off on our own. We're good. And we just kept encouraging him, dude, just stay. Stay until that door opens, and you can't deny that door is wide open for you. And all of a sudden he got a job opportunity, dude. He went from, and it's not all about finances, but just to give the example, making $15 an hour, feeling completely hopeless, drowning in a bottle, to all of a sudden he's an aviation mechanic, making over 6 figures. He had his aviation background from being in the military because he's a veteran. So hopeless veteran, dude. And he's calling, he's like, dude, I even have a girlfriend now.
Wow, man.
Bro, and I'm like,
I get the chills right now.
Yeah. Tears rolling down my face. But going back to the compassion fatigue thing, like those are the moments that ignite the fire under us to keep doing this, dude. Like because there's those painful moments, but then when you hear these success stories, it's just like
worth it.
Worth it all.
Bro,
worth it.
You put your foot even harder on that gas pedal.
Today's program giveaway is the RGB bundle. If you want to enter to win, leave a comment below this video in the first 24 hours that we drop it. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. If you win, we'll let you know in the comments section. Also, MAPS Performance is 50% off. The most balanced strength training program we've ever created is MAPS Performance. Go check it out. Go to mapsperformance.com. Use the code ATHLETE50 for the 50% off discount. All right, here comes the show. You said something earlier, Tom, that 90% of the people that call are friends or family members or loved ones of the addicted person. And, off air before you guys came on, you and I had talked, and I said, I can imagine that it's probably friends and family members and loved ones that can oftentimes keep that person, without realizing it, keep that person in the cycle of addiction. And so, and you agreed. And so I wanted to talk about like, what if someone's listening right now and they're struggling with somebody they love who's addicted, and they're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. This person's going to kill themselves. What are the mistakes? What are the things that they do that keep that person in that cycle? What is it? What are the common mistakes that you see that people just don't realize?
Well, a lot of it boils down to ignorance, right? Because
You just don't know.
you don't know what you don't know. And unless you actually spend a lot of time and energy in this space and, doing what we do, it's like raising a child. It doesn't come with a playbook. So when you do find out that, one of your loved ones struggles with addiction, then you go to what you think is going to be natural. And a lot of it is moms, right? The vast majority of people that we speak to are moms. Yeah. And Ben uses a great analogy of mother bear. A mom is going to do anything that they can possibly do to protect their cubs to their own expense, And that's what we see happen a lot of times is, our judgment becomes so skewed because we're doing absolutely anything that we can to keep our child alive.
Yeah.
At the expense of ourselves, at the expense of our finances, at the expense of our careers, our own mental, emotional health and well-being. All that stuff gets put on the back burner because we need to keep our child safe.
Very counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Super counterintuitive. I mean, and it's really easy for somebody on the outside looking in who sees the addict who's stealing and doing bad shit, all these things, and be like, God, why don't you just kick him out? Or why don't you just, but when it's actually your kid or your brother or and I've had it close to me in family, and it's like, man, you see it and you're like, what you're supposed to do because maybe you've even heard, and you're like, but that's so hard to do, especially when they're in that state because you right away default to, God, but if we don't, they're going to die or it's going to get worse so it's very counterintuitive to do what you probably need to do in that situation, and really tough when it's your cub,
There's a saying, you can literally love your addict to death. And I like to paint a picture like this because a lot of times parents, loved ones that hear what the suggestions that we have and they're like, oh my God, I can't do that. But let me ask this question. If I am going to, in life, one of the hardest things for me, I have two kids, a 15-year-old and a 7-year-old. The worst thing for me ever is to see my kids in pain, right? Mm-hmm. Like as a parent, it hurts in the gut, in the heart, in a way that's unexplainable. But if I'm willing to do these things and put myself in that pain as a parent, what greater love could you show? Right? So it's people are like, oh, I can't do that to them. But the reality of the situation is doing the hard thing, doing the right thing is the best demonstration of love that you can absolutely show, because more than anyone, it's going to hurt the parent. It's going to hurt the loved one.
And it's going to hurt the kid.
Yeah.
So what comes to mind for me, I have someone close to me who dealt with this with their son. Thankfully, they're sober now, and they actually work with addicts now. So it's a success story. But during this period of time, it was rough. It was rough for the family. And one of the fears was, because they were advised, like, you got to cut them off. And they're like, well, then they're going to be on the streets. And then this is going to happen. At least now I know that they're in my house and I can see if they're okay. Like, that's got to be the most counterintuitive, counter-feeling thing ever, is to cut them off when what you feel is, well, no, they need me close. They need me to be as close as possible, and I need to help them this entire. Is that what you mean by love them to death?
Yeah, and I think that we can give some tangible examples too. For instance, like the first one that comes off oftentimes, people ask about like finances, and we'll end up like if you have an addict, alcoholic, child, loved one, whatever the case is, basically financially sponsoring their alcoholism. A lot of families are like, oh, if I just pay their rent for them, He'll have a roof over his head. I know he's in a safe dwelling.
Right. Which makes kind of sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Who doesn't want their kid or their loved one to have shelter, right? But the reality of the situation is essentially every bit of financial resources that you give them is time and energy that they're able to take their own finances to finance their addiction further. So while it sounds scary, my loved one, they're not going to pay their rent. They quote unquote could end up homeless. At the same time, as long as you're paying their rent, their time, energy, and resources going into that next drink versus having to pay the rent. So the financial help tends to keep the situation comfortable for the addict alcoholic. And until it becomes unmanageable and recognizable by them that it's unmanageable, they're just going to stay the course, because alcoholism, drugs, they're rewarding, to call it what it is. When I have life problems, for me, I hit a crack pipe, I put a needle in my arm, I take a drink, all of a sudden my problems are gone, right? But until that situation becomes uncomfortable to the point where I'm like, okay, this isn't working as a solution anymore, because I'll tell you this, alcohol and drugs is a phenomenal solution to my internal problem. Mm-hmm. It worked so well that I can't let go of it now. And we have to kind of nudge them in a direction where, okay, this isn't working anymore.
How do you sell that?
I feel like this is how I'd try and sell to myself. I'd have to reframe it as, so whatever thing, whether it's rent, gas, food that I'm paying for, and whatever their addiction is, alcohol, heroin, whatever, I'd have to go, oh, that $5,000 rent is a total amount of hits I just gave them. I'd have to reframe the dollar amount that I was helping
because you guys
contributing to X amount more drugs or X amount more beer, and think that that's literally what I just gave them. Instead of like thinking that you're giving them shelter, it's more like, no, I just gave them 17 more hits of heroin because I paid for that thing.
Would it be accurate to say something like this? Like, if you continue to financially rescue them, the odds are high that they're going to die from their addiction. Mm-hmm. If you kick them out, there's still potential they can die, but you've just improved the odds that they won't. Would that be a safe?
Yeah, I would say that you've improved the odds that they're going to ask for help.
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Either way, I think
it's scary either way.
It stays the same, especially nowadays, man, with the fentanyl epidemic. Like, whether I'm shooting heroin in the safety of my mom's home or shooting heroin and fentanyl on a bench homeless, the odds are I can die.
Right.
What we want to increase the odds on is the odds that they're going to ask for help.
Got it. Got it.
The one thing I want to add to this is, when we're talking to a family member or loved one and kind of coaching them through this process, and this kind of goes into the second point, a lot of times they are acting on emotion, right? Emotions for a family member fuels their next
move,
directive. Their next move. But just the same as like when you're talking to your addict loved one, don't come at them, which is what 99% of the time people do. And I speak from experience. I mean, me and my father almost got into fist fights, I put him up against a wall one time, because he was threatening my addiction. But when we're talking to family members, I don't come at them either. Like, a lot of times when I'm talking to them, I want them to come up with the answers. That it's not my answer. You said it. You know that this is the right thing to do. So if we tie this into finances, I oftentimes will just do a role reversal and say, okay, let's role play here. Let's walk through this scenario. I'm the addict. Mom, I need $500 for rent. I'm short $500 on rent. I'm tugging at your heartstrings here. I need this money or else I'm going to miss my rent. And you give me this money, exactly what you just said, Adam.
Yeah.
I got $500, and $500 to somebody is a lot. I mean, that can go really far when it comes to drugs and alcohol, And so really kind of walking them through this process. If I just go to them and say, hey, listen, you can't financially support them anymore. It's killing them, yada, yada, yada. Now you're competing with their emotions and their kind of like mother bear instinct. Mm-hmm. But that's why a lot of time, like I shared this earlier, one of the ladies that I spoke with, once we started working together, my very first conversation with her was on January 2nd. I had to look in my text thread. January 2nd of this year. Her husband just got to us 3 days ago, and we're in late August. It's a process. Like, this takes time. And a lot of it is just coaching and, you know, how to enter into these conversations, because the second point that we wanted to make, we have the financial aspect, which we know, but the acting on emotion, we have to try and eliminate the emotion from the situation. Let's just look at it for what it is, you know, because if you look at somebody else's situation, you would probably give them the same advice that we're giving you.
Do you give advice like this around? Because how do you deal with that? Is it like, look, before you say or do anything, call me so I can help you through this process? Does it look something like that?
Exactly like that. And I literally use this example all the time. I look at myself. I'm an expert in addiction. You know, personal. I've gone to school for it. I've been working in the field for 13 years now. Firsthand experience. And I say this all the time. If I have to go through this with my kids, with all my knowledge on this, with all my experience, the first thing I'm going to do is turn it over to somebody else. Outsource it because I'm emotionally attached to this situation. And even with my insight to addiction, I'm blinded. And I've had situations like that in my life where I've had close family members where I've had to like kind of push it off on somebody else and say, hey, I want to stay involved in this situation, but can you kind of take the reins on this? Because at the end of the day, emotion will completely kill this process.
That makes sense. Are there patterns that you guys see? Like, for example, like you talk to so many people that are dealing with this, and based off of how much, you know, financial support they're getting from, say, a family member or not, can you tell early on how difficult this is going to be for you guys? For example, like maybe there's this addict who's, you know, may just barely scraping by and is addicted, but he doesn't have any sort of support or help from family. No enabling is going on. That person, you're talking to that person versus the person who's living at home still for free rent or whatever with mom and dad, and they're out. Like, is there a clear difference on the success rate of those, or how easily you're going to get that person to adopt some of this, or is it different for every individual?
I would definitely say it's different for every individual, because there's so many factors that go into this, where if you have the one that's at home living with mom could be the obstacle. But just to call it what it is, we've had clients in situations where they're completely homeless and they've become so comfortable with being homeless.
So it's not even a motivator for them.
Exactly. So it's
crazy.
You literally have to become an expert at navigating every situation. This thing is not black and white whatsoever. Why, to Sal's point, it's so important to bring it to somebody else.
Yeah.
Well, Ben says it all the time. You have to be kind of the best manipulator in the room, because that's a lot of times it takes one to know one, right? And a family member oftentimes don't know. And a lot of what Ben and I do is manipulation in a way, but we're manipulating you into a good life, like the second half of your life. You know, we're manipulating you into a new opportunity. And we're good at it because we've been there. Like I was manipulated into treatment. Ben was manipulated into treatment. I was manipulated into staying in treatment. I was manipulated into going into sober living. I didn't want to necessarily do any of this stuff because I was comfortable. I was fine drinking every day, doing all that stuff. But I was manipulated. And now, knowing what I know now, like, obviously, you know, my dad had to get extremely uncomfortable. He didn't want to have to do all this stuff. He didn't want to have to throw me out of the house, fire me from my job. My own father had to call me and fire me.
Did he get support from outside to do this with you?
So, not really. And, my dad is, it was just him and I just growing up. And we were here last July, and my story's there, so people can go back and listen to that. But not really. He just, for whatever reason, he kind of had like this internal like instinct. Well, I mean, if we're speaking honestly here, and today he says that the day before he was praying that something would happen for me. And he says, and I don't know how true this is, but he said that he picked up the phone book and went into the yellow pages and found like Alcoholics Anonymous and called that number, and it diverted to a treatment center. I don't know. Either way, he did what God instructed him to do at that time. And, I was on a one-way flight to Florida to go to treatment. But no, he didn't attend any Al-Anon or support groups, because it was a very kind of, he didn't know anybody that really struggled with that stuff. But all to say, because he didn't have the resources and stuff, that's why Ben and I spend a lot of our time and energy into really kind of coaching families on what to do.
I was just going to ask, how much of obviously a lot of this is working with the addict, right? They come, they're getting treatment, you're helping them. How much of it is helping the family?
Well, so
probably most of it, I would think. I mean, I would think the enabling part is probably one of the biggest parts of all this.
You got two sides to this. You got when Ben and I were in treatment, and any of the people that come into our program, they have a licensed clinician. They have drivers. They have all the food that they can eat, all the coffee that you can drink, transportation to and from whatever, doctor's appointments, all this case management. We're really going to come alongside you and help you, kind of get through this stuff. Family members, a lot of times, are just told, well, go to an Al-Anon meeting, go to your local church and see what support that you can get. So not a lot. But prior to getting somebody into treatment, that is where like Ben and I spend a lot of time and energy with the families, and to getting them into a program, whether it's ours or any other program, doesn't make a difference to us, but also like continuing to help them through that process.
How often does that involve you guys kind of coming in, having to do some kind of structured, organized intervention type setting? Or is it, I mean, obviously you talked about this is a long process of talking and coaching the family members to get to the point where they agree to the treatment, right? But at what point is it like it has to happen, and then there has to be this like sort of family confrontation?
So I'll say this. For instance, a lot of people are familiar with the show Intervention.
Yeah.
I think it's, to be honest with you, pretty misleading.
I would imagine. Right? It's entertainment.
I figured as much, yeah.
I have heard on the back end, I don't know if this 100% factual, but the addict actually gets paid a certain amount of cash. I've heard that number, but in case I'm wrong, I don't want to say it. But with that being said, the majority of interventions, so to speak, are able to be done remotely. Because what we're doing is we're coaching the family into the right moves, showing them, what cards they have in their pocket to be able to influence the decision to getting there. And I'll say this, Tom and I, we're making a real effort to kind of change how much help families, they need to realize how much help they need. Mm-hmm. A lot of families, to call it what it is, are like, oh, he's the alcoholic addict. Yeah. If he gets better, then I'm better.
Right.
But that's not the truth. What we end up finding out is a lot of times the family's sicker than the addict alcoholic themselves. If you call it what it is, my mom suffered the same misery I was suffering in my active addiction, but she lost out. She didn't even get to get high. I got to get high, right? I'm like, oh, this feels good, right? So essentially, she's losing sleep, she's losing time, energy, and resources, and she's dying inside. And so what it comes down to is to Tom's point, he was talking about how we take our clients and we literally bring them to outside meetings. Like we introduce them to people. We have the therapy at our center. They get the one-on-one sessions with their therapist, the group counseling. Parent or loved one, or you tell them, hey, just go to this meeting. And we kind of have the same expectation that they're going to be able to go into that meeting and fruitfully come out of it on the other side, where why do they need less than what the alcoholic addict needs? Like they need somebody to hold their hand and walk them into that meeting.
Of course. Yeah.
And that's something that Tom and I have been trying to implement, like through our podcast. The whole point in our podcast, Real Recovery Talk, is that we started it because we realized, like, hey, we're here helping clients, but nobody's paying attention to the families. The families are in the dark. Most centers, they're lucky if they get a phone call from the therapist every 2 weeks, just say, hey, your loved one's safe and they're still here. And they're like freaking out, not knowing what's going on. But the thing is they need to do their own work. Going back to, I ask parents all the time, kind of tongue in cheek, I'll be like, what's your drug of choice? And they're like, well, I don't do drugs. I don't drink. And I'm like, and I switch the question, who is your drug of choice? And they're like, oh, Joey is. I'm like, because they're so busy. It's all about control. Addiction, alcoholism, it has so much to do with control. And the families and loved ones are trying to control the situation with their addict when in fact they're powerless. So we got to get them the help to see, like, hey, you're powerless in this situation. You could be influential, but it's up to Joey whether or not he's going to decide that he wants to get sober.
This episode is brought to you by Seed, the world's best probiotic. There are none that compete with this one. If you want to use a probiotic for all of its health benefits, use Seed. Go to seed.com/mindpump. Use the code 25mindpump. Get yourself 25% off. Back to the show. I got to ask you guys this because I can't imagine what you guys do is it's such a incredible calling. It's so challenging. And I can't imagine what it must be like when you guys work with someone and it just doesn't work, or somebody ODs. How do you guys keep going? Because I think what you guys do is incredible. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it because that would just, what is that like for you guys? How do you guys help each other through that process? Because it's not 100% success rate. There's no way.
Can I touch on this one, Tom?
Yeah.
I might cry talking about
That's
this
all right.
one. We had a client that he went to a detox, and we're good friends with the people that run this detox. And they had a young man, it was their childhood best friend they grew up with. And they reached out to us and said, hey man, we got this guy Blake. And Blake ended up going to their detox, and they asked me if I would come over and speak with Blake. The reason being, Blake was into fitness. He played semi-pro football. He's from Jersey. And just really fit the bill for what we do at Rock with all the adventure, experiential therapy, the fitness stuff. And I go over there, we sit down, him and I, we connect, right? There was just, in some cases, sometimes there's just something different about a client as far as that personal relationship. You know, I think all our clients are special. I love them all, but once in a while you come across somebody that just something is different. And he ends up going through our program. And at the time, I was coaching my son's Pee-wee football. My son's been playing football. He's 15 now, but he started when he was 8, and he was playing at Palm Beach County Youth Football League. And I got, they asked me to coach, so I coached for 3 years. But because he played semi-pro ball, when he was done with his treatment part and living in our sober house, his therapist and I sat him down and said, hey, man, why don't you come coach football with me? And he ended up coming out and coached with us for that season. We made it all the way to the Super Bowl.
Wow.
Lost. But my son and him became so close. I mean, my son looked up to Blake. I can't even put it into words. He was an absolute mentor for him. Blake was a beast on the football field and just one of the most kind, intelligent, loving people. You look at him and you're like, this guy, fentanyl, it didn't even add up. Didn't add up whatsoever. But he ended up getting over a year of sobriety and ended up working in the field in treatment. And out of nowhere one day, I get a phone call working at the treatment center did a line of fentanyl, locked in one of the offices, and they weren't able to resuscitate him.
Oh, man.
And to answer your question, the drive to keep going on, the first thing we did, because we're a tight-knit community, man. People in recovery, they're family. I have family members that aren't blood that would literally do anything for them. People like Tom, man. And I got a bunch of other guys that I could list off. But we showed up to a meeting that night when we got the news. And I just remember sitting in this meeting, and I raised my hand and shared. And I was just so angry at the disease of addiction, right? But in that moment, I told myself, I'm going to do everything that I can to make sure that this doesn't happen to somebody else. And now, do I have all the power in the world? No, I'm powerless again, just like any parent or loved one. But becoming that close to somebody, sometimes I feel like these things happen for a reason. And don't get me wrong, man, like, I wish this never happened. But it's situations like that that hurt so bad that just give me the drive to say, you know what? I'm going to continue doing this. Because if I stop, how many other parents are going to lose their kid?
Yeah.
Right? That's where that drive comes from. You know, I touched on earlier, like Mark getting the phone call a couple weeks ago, how great he's doing. But then when we see these situations, while they're absolutely gut-wrenching, especially when you got to talk to the parents afterwards. Dude, his mom comes down and visits with us probably about 3 times a year and tells us, she's like, I come down and I hang out with you all because this is the place where I feel closest to my son. Was with us, not at home in Jersey, but with the people that he spent his last year of sobriety with. That's how amazing this journey can be, right? The connections that you make. And those outcomes, man, like I said, they're gut-wrenching. But God gave us a purpose. Anybody in recovery, man, anybody in active addiction, alcoholism, God gave us a free purpose card, right? We do this thing, and then we go out, we carry a message. And I truly believe in my heart, God gave me that purpose card and doesn't want me to throw it away, no matter how bad it hurts sometimes.
Yeah. God bless you guys for that. That's tough. Yeah, I had to ask that because it's just, you guys do such an incredible job and it's so hard. I can't even imagine.
Well, it brings you closer though to the Mark story though, like a story like that, because you know that he could have been that, right? So I would imagine the swings of emotion, like you've seen the darkest of dark, but then you have the like, man, this guy could have been that guy, and we kept that from happening. So I would think too that one of the other biggest mistakes that happen is family members that are like on the fence, or people that are on the fence. Like how often, and is that one of the biggest mistakes is, you know, you're kind of aware your family member or person's addicted, but they're also managing it at the same time. And so it's like, you know, do we step in now? Is it that important? I would imagine there's a lot of that. I mean, I know that personally from my personal experience in families, like, well, I mean, he still was taking care of himself and doing other things. And so nobody's really forcing him to go anywhere or do anything because he hasn't done anything so crazy. He almost died yet. And, you know, he is kind of managing this addiction. He still can do other things. So is that common where people just kind of are in that idle place?
I think that there's, you know, with alcohol, yes. With marijuana, yes. I do think that there is sometimes people enter into the treatment process probably prematurely. And the truth of the matter is sometimes you enter into the treatment process for, you know, if you're a young guy or a young girl and parents just freak out. Oh my gosh, I caught Johnny with I guess now it would be a THC pen or something. He's 18 years old and, you know, we found this THC pen. Does it constitute shipping him off 1,500 miles away into a treatment center where he's going to be introduced to people that are IV fentanyl users.
Wow. Yeah.
This goes back to Ben's point. Don't ever try and figure this out on your own. Because we could come back and be like, hey, it might do Johnny a disservice to put him into a treatment
I never
program.
even thought about that, and I'm sure that happens. You got to have parents that knee-jerk reaction because of something, and then they go send them to a place where there's a higher percentage of people addicted to worse things that are also unsuccessful sometimes. Like
very influential.
I didn't even think about that as a challenge.
Well, that's where it takes ethics in our field too.
I was just going to say, because you're talking
you
about
have to turn that business away.
Yeah, 100%. You know, so I'm gonna just call it what it is. There's places out there. You know, we found a nickel bag in Johnny's sock drawer. Johnny needs to come to rehab or he's gonna die. Right? Like, it's like, come on, man. You know, at the end of the day, these are human beings, right? And doing right by these families is, because I have some very specific examples of premature intervention. When I very first started working in treatment, I was behavioral health tech, which is like front line. You're driving the vans around. Probably favorite job I ever had in treatment, to be honest with you. Incredible, spending just all day hanging out with clients. But we had a young man that, I think he was from Michigan, smoking weed, ate a Xanax bar one time, blacked out, did some weird behavior. Mom ships him down, and all of a sudden he's introduced to this young man who is in treatment for crack. Next thing you know, he talks his kid into leaving AMA, against medical advice, to go try smoking crack. The kid is in Florida for 2 weeks, lets a crack dealer borrow his car, and it was at the Gardens Mall. It was on the news and stuff, but he tried to get his car back from the crack dealer. The crack dealer shot him in the head in the parking lot.
Oh my God.
So a parent, out of straight fear, this kid was, I'm going to venture to say he was probably experimenting like any other kid, is my professional assessment of it. It wasn't at the point of needing professional intervention whatsoever. But out of fear, mom sent him into treatment, introduced crack. So it does have to be evaluated on the front end, like, and in most cases, 99% of the time, if somebody's reaching out for treatment, it's at the point where they.
I was just going to ask you, like, give me a number of, like, 100 people call or 20 people call. How many are the kid who just smoked weed a few times and probably shouldn't come, or that you have to turn down? Is that a?
Well, here's the interesting thing about weed, and I kind of like, because I've heard you guys talk about this on the podcast before, and like I love hearing the conversations you guys have around it. Marijuana is very kind of
accepted.
It's accepted in a way, right? And a lot of time, people are like, "Oh, there's no harm in marijuana." Oh, there's no harm in kratom. Yeah. Kratom is the new thing, which we can spend a few minutes on that.
Yeah.
But marijuana, like if you find a nickel bag in Johnny's sock drawer, okay, fine. Like, we might tell you, listen, Alice, just chill out for a little bit. We're going to stay in contact with you and to see if this progresses into anything. But what we see a lot of with marijuana, especially heavy marijuana use, is the mental health aspect of it. That is where things get really kind of spicy.
Oh yeah, you use it a long time, and a lot of it, the odds of paranoia, schizophrenia, just distorted beliefs and
depression.
Go through the roof.
Yes, and that is what a lot of the navigating we're doing. Like if somebody's seeking out treatment for marijuana use, a lot of times we're going down the mental health road. So is there a mental health diagnosis? And you see this a lot with young men in their late teens, early 20s. And there's studies that have proven a lot of this, that, heavy pot use will bring about, the schizophrenic tendencies and stuff. So it's really kind of a balancing act. But I do want to draw attention to the idea that marijuana is not in any capacity, if you're somebody like myself and Ben, it is not a viable option.
Yeah.
Because you give me a joint or a THC vape pen or whatever, you give Ben one, Ben's going to be shooting heroin by the end of the day, and I'm gonna be bottom up in a bottle of Jim Beam, because we go right back to that. I'm looking for an external solution for an internal problem that I maybe didn't even realize was there until I ingested that THC. And in fact, Florida, there was a little bit of a period of time they were doing like these marijuana maintenance programs. And
for addicts?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Wow. Mm-hmm. They've recently come out with legislation. It's now illegal in the state of Florida to have marijuana in a substance abuse treatment center.
Yeah, and I think that has done very well for the state of Florida, because
how important is it to look, because not all substances are equal, right? Caffeine's a drug, so is nicotine. You got marijuana, you got alcohol. You got to treat them all differently, and they all have they all have different risks. And I think what you're saying is 100% correct. Yeah. I think they used to call it a gateway. I used to laugh at that.
It lowers your inhibitions.
I used to laugh at that, and now I'm like, actually, I think that's true.
Well, let me elaborate too. Where for me, alcohol is my slippery slope. I got one of the metabolisms. I take one sip of alcohol, I instantly test positive for crack every time. But a lot of people don't look at the indirect causes either. Like Tom made the statement, if I smoked weed, I'd be shooting heroin by the end of the day. Is that true? I honestly, I'm gonna argue that. I don't think so.
7 days.
Here's the problem for me with marijuana is that I got sober, and I'm surrounded by people who are sober, who I need to continue to be around to stay off of my drugs of choice. The alcohol, the meth, the heroin, the coke. When I start smoking weed, all of a sudden, I'm not part of that circle of people and the resources that helped me to where I got today. Right. So a lot of times there's an indirect cause.
Sure.
I'm not going to show up to a 12-step meeting if I'm smoking weed because I'm going to feel shame. I'm not going to sponsor somebody and practice a 12-step.
And hiding and lying is a slippery slope. Correct. I lie about this, and I can lie about the next thing, and next thing you know,
so
my integrity's out the window.
So there's direct and indirect, and I always like to bring that up because I have to educate our clients on that. They're like, oh, weed's not a big deal. I'm like, yes, but is it going to take you away from everything that you were doing
Good point.
to get to your success today?
Really good point.
Let's talk about kratom, because I've struggled with kratom. In fact, at the moment, I'm coming off of it, and my wife confronted me about it, and I'm not going crazy with it, but it's got a grip. I had a grip on me. Is that something that we need to talk about and worry about? I know it acts on the opiate receptors and this, that, and the other, and there's fitness people that sell it. Yeah. In fact, they tried to sponsor us at one point. We said no. Yeah. Let's talk about that. Is this becoming an issue?
Well, there's different types, if you will. Actually, in the state of Florida, a week or two ago, it wasn't long ago, they actually made the 7-OH. So they've essentially taken kratom leaf and made these extracts, and they're even stronger.
Turned it into heroin, basically, pills.
Correct. So, like any good addict, we figure out how to make something stronger. Yeah. So essentially, it becomes, we're seeing a huge uptick in people ending up in detox because of kratom. Wow. And it's because the strength and the potency has increased. Yeah. So, and just to kind of hit home the point, I'd say probably 5-6 years ago, if you called an insurance company and said, hey, I got a client that needs detox from kratom because of the physical withdrawals, they'd say no. When insurance companies started paying for detox for kratom, there's
a problem.
Yeah, there's a problem with it. So, and essentially what we're seeing, and I try not to look at too many studies as far as substance abuse and alcoholism because they can be skewed in whatever direction. Okay. I really focus on what I see firsthand at Rock because we get to work with so many people. But the amount of people that we're seeing seek treatment for kratom has skyrocketed.
Really?
Wow.
Absolutely skyrocketed. And the withdrawal symptoms, as the potency has increased, has become brutal for some. You would think that they were coming off fentanyl.
Yeah. Wow.
In fact, now I don't have anything to back this other than personal. My mother actually just informed me a few weeks ago that there's a young man that she's friends with through Al-Anon, whose drug of choice was kratom. My mom knows his mom, and he actually had an Instagram page basically educating people on kratom because he was addicted to it, and he had like a year off of it. But he actually just overdosed and passed away from kratom. And they said the only thing in his system
What's that?
was that.
Oh, wow.
So, and then I just heard of a second death too, strictly kratom.
I would imagine
So-
that has to be the 7-OH though, just because the amount of
Yes.
pills you would have to take in the traditional form. Like that means someone's getting the concentrated, which is why they led to that, right? Because to feel that much from the like regular powder, you'd have to be taking 100 pills to fill with the 7-OH or whatever it is, right?
Correct.
It's
And
that-
I want to be careful, you know, being on air to not like speak something that's not true. But this stuff is just happening so recently that I don't think the stats are coming out, so to speak. You know,
They were
kind of-
selling it as a way to get off of opioids.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you know what? This is like, you just get on this and, you know, the withdrawal's no big deal and whatever.
Well, here's my take on this, and I'm going to throw out Chris Bell's name.
Yeah.
Mark Bell's brother.
Yep.
Yeah.
He did the documentary A Leaf of Faith.
Right.
Yep.
He has double hip replacement, opioid addict,
Yep.
big fan of kratom.
Yep.
Now, at the time of him creating this documentary, this probably would be, I'm going to guess 10 years
Yeah, it's
ago.
been about 10 years.
It was vastly different then.
It was
you know?
just the plant.
It's a plant, you know, dried out, crumbled up. You mix it in some hot water and you drink it. Okay, fine. But here we are 10 years later, and I actually did an Instagram reel on this and just kind of, I was cheering the fact that Florida banned 7-OH. And the amount of people that were like, that's BS, blah, 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 blah. Like, the reason I did this was because you could walk into any given gas station, like, and look at the packaging of it. You know, my 9-year-old son could walk into this gas station and think that it's sour candy.
Yeah.
You know, there's a reason that this stuff is so, it's packaged the way that it's packaged. It's marketed the way that it's marketed. And the problem is that when you have somebody like myself and Ben that are addicts, we're not going to do anything, you know, in a small way, right? we're going all in.
Well, I'll speak from personal experience. Like any classic drug, you take a certain amount, you feel it, very quickly you build up a tolerance, and you need more. And it's a very slippery slope. 3 pills becomes 6 pills, becomes 12 pills, and you just need more and more and more. And the logical step is the stronger stuff. Now, man, I'm taking 25 of these a day or 30 a day, which regular kratom users will oftentimes use. Thankfully, I never got that high, but often. So they'll say, oh, you know what? Instead of taking 30 of these, I'll take 2 of these strong ones, and I get these great effects, except you build up tolerance to that as well. And then that ramps up. And next thing you know, it's cheaper and easier to go
It's the
inject
same
it.
progression that you get, how you get to. I remember I used to always think, and this was pre me, because I've withdrawn from both kratom and withdrawn both from Vicodin, so I know what it's like to be addicted to both of those. And it's the same. And I used to always think, like, how could someone ever shoot a needle into their arm for? But when you are around people, which I was when I was popping those pills, you start to see, oh, this is how it starts. It starts off with a couple of Vicodin, and then a couple of Vicodin turn into 20. You're taking handfuls of them at a time, and then you start going like, dude, I'm taking 30, 50 of these. It's expensive. Oxycontins will give me, 20, or one Oxycontin will give me what 20 Vicodin felt like. So then I take one of those, and then I start taking those and go, oh, well, now I'm taking 10 of those. Like at this point, shooting heroin is actually better for my liver and cheaper. So that's exactly how. And then I went, oh, you don't just start at heroin. You start, and then it actually becomes the logical progression because of how many of these pills you're doing. And then you actually make that, you have that conversation of, oh, it would be healthier for me to stab the needle in me than it would be to take these 20 pills that are so potent and expensive. And so it's a no-brainer. So it's a similar progression, and the fact that it's legal makes it super scary and dangerous because a kid or any person who thinks, I mean, this is why we wouldn't promote it. I was already aware of the addictive properties that came with it because I had already experienced it. And I remember telling these guys, like, oh wow, that felt a lot like coming off of my Vicodin. Felt like it was that difficult to come off it. Now it wasn't quite as strong, but I could easily see how it could get that way. And this I had never heard of until recently, the 7-OH. That was literally just a concentrated form of that. So it's the Oxycontin of Vicodin in the similar family, you know?
Yeah, and if you look at it from someone who's attempting to be in recovery, if I come in for fentanyl and that receptor, I introduce kratom, which works on the same receptor, chances are it's going to kick that back into gear, and I'm going to want the fentanyl again because you're firing up that receptor again.
Those neurons that fire together wire together. If you like Tom and Ben and you need help or someone you know needs help, go to rockrecoverycenter.com/mindpump. They're going to be giving away a free scholarship, a $60,000 scholarship to somebody who needs help. Go check them out. Back to the show.
Sal, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Okay, so you came on our podcast.
Yeah.
This would have been, I don't even remember. Was this 2 years ago now?
Might have been a year and a half.
It was when it was at NCI.
Yeah.
The NCI conference in Orlando. I distinctly remember in that episode, you had talked about really just getting in. You had talked about getting into kratom.
Yep.
Why I can't remember exactly why. And now here we are today. You're saying that you're struggling coming off of it.
Yep.
I think that this makes. I'd be curious to know from your perspective, if you're okay sharing it.
Yeah, go for
kind of
it.
how this progression worked for you.
Easy. So I just love taking supplements.
Yeah.
So if it's a supplement, then I'm probably going to experiment with it.
We got introduced by Bell. I believe that was his.
Yeah,
the magic bullet.
Yeah. And I fitness has prevented me from probably becoming addicted to other things. So I've become addicted to fitness, which has its own separate problems. But I used it once, and I'm like, this puts me in a good mood. And it's a herbal supplement, and I could just take it whenever. And it wasn't that big of a deal. It was like the occasional whatever. The occasional turned into I want to feel like this, more often, and then I want to feel like this all the time, and then that doesn't work, and so you take more. So I've taken it and come off of it probably 3 times. So I've taken it, come off of it, and then gone long enough period of time, and then be like, typically a challenging thing. So recently I started using it again because my uncle passed away, who I was very close to, and I drove up to they were up in Roseville. So I drove up in Roseville. It's about 2.5 hours away. Very difficult time for the family. This was my godfather, very close to him. A lot of tears, just very challenging. And I was getting ready to drive home, and I'm in the car alone by myself. And it's really hard for me to be alone with those kinds of feelings, especially in a car driving. For whatever reason. It's just really difficult. And I'm like, I'm going to get sleepy. This is really tough. I don't got nobody to talk to. It'll keep me awake. I'm going to go to the smoke shop because that's where you get them here. And I'm just going to grab a single dose of it. That's how I talk myself. I'm just going to get a single dose of this so I can make the drive home. I'm not going to get sleepy. It'll keep me awake. And I'll just, put me in a better mood. And so that's what I did. And then of course we had the funeral, and then we had the, where we bury him. And so it became this like kick the can down the road type of thing. And then since then it became this kind of like daily thing. And for me, I'll speak again personally, it's easy it became easy to justify like, today it's just me and the kids all day long. We're going to go to the park. I want to be in a good mood so I can hang out with my kids and play with them and be super present. So that's not a bad thing, but it became like an everyday thing until, recently, I was sitting with my wife and now I wrestle with things a lot more just after I became a Christian. So now I see things differently, or should I say he helps me see things differently. And we were going to bed and my wife asked me point blank if I was using it. And I lied to her. And I said, no, I'm not. I went to bed and I immediately repented, prayed, just felt terrible, got no sleep. I felt just convicted. Like I got to tell her the truth. And I'm like, she's going to hate me. And I told her and she gave me grace right away. And so through that, talking to her and I'm like, all right, I'm going to work my way off of it now. But this is like the 3rd time now where I've taken it and come off of it. Because
I've taken it and come off of it probably 10, 15 times, way more times.
What's it feel like when you go back on it?
Puts you in a good mood.
After you've been off of it? Because what happens when you've been on it for an extended period of time is it just normalizes. You're no longer at one point.
Thank God, I've never gotten to that point. Thank
yeah,
God.
Yeah, at one point, and that's typically when I know it's time to go the other way, which is like, oh, okay, like I don't even feel it anymore. It's like I'm just having to take this to not be in a bad mood. Or in my case, where it gets really difficult is sleep. It'll disrupt sleep, which was this is all similar feelings as when I had Vicodin way back in the day. Was one of the hardest parts of kicking that addiction is how much it F's up sleep. I mean, which I'm sure that's for some alcohols. If you go really high in alcohol, it probably disrupted sleep when you had to come off of it. Like that's the most miserable part is like the daytime I can deal with the runny nose and the same similar feelings that you feel from any other opiate. But it's at night where you're trying to sleep and it's like, oh God, I just need to sleep. I need a couple of these to sleep. And so it ends up being you're taking it just to get sleep or be normal. That's the hardest part.
You touched on the normalization. And Sal, something that you said really jumped out to me too with you're taking the kids to the park.
Yeah.
What a lot of people don't realize, like if you're a family member, loved one, watching your addict alcoholic, what they don't realize is my perception of me shooting heroin, when I'm on heroin, I'm a better parent. I'm that parent at the park.
I could see where that would go.
Playing with my kid because I have the energy. What a lot of people from the outside looking in don't see that our perception is. I actually felt like drugs and alcohol enhanced me, right? I use them for enhancement. One of the examples that I used when my first job working in a gym was with LA Fitness in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, but it was a pill mill state. This was probably in 2003, about when the Oxycontin was and the Roxycodones were everywhere. But when I first started taking Roxycodones at LA Fitness, my sales shot through the roof.
Yeah.
And I remember the manager saying to me, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. I'm like, okay. But then my paycheck couldn't keep up with my habit because my tolerance went up.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, like I'm in all kinds of trouble with LA Fitness.
Sin feels like heaven until you try to stop.
That's the hard part too, I think, for probably family members to understand. I was explaining this to Katrina because we have family that battle with addiction and stuff like that. And I was explaining to her that she would be like, oh, he must be on one because he's being an asshole. I go, the opposite is probably true. He's probably trying to come off right now, which is why he's an asshole and irritated and short and all those things like that. When you see him all happy and he's all good, he's probably on one. It's the opposite. And so what a tough thing too for both the family and the addict to try and navigate is because a lot of times the addict is trying to pull back or trying to do that thing and they're miserable and it's rough and they're going through it. And everyone else in the family may think that's the time when he's high. It's like, no, the opposite is true, is when he's chill and happy and having a good time, he's probably on one. And then when you see him irritable and stuff like that, maybe he's trying to come off right now.
Yeah,
and so
you said it earlier about control. That's the illusion.
Yep.
That's for me the illusion, is that I can manage it. And boy, can I lie to myself. I do a good job. I don't take more than this, and I'll back it down. I'll weave into it and weave out of it, and it's all.
Or we try and
it's all
justify
bullshit.
it to ourselves.
It's all bullshit.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah, I never used a lot or whatever, and I'm fine and all that stuff. But it's definitely there. And so I could see, the blessing side of it, I guess, that I'm starting to see now is I can understand a little bit of how people go down that path and just keep going down that path. So
Yeah, it gets to the point, total loss of control.
that's it. Yeah, total illusion.
I don't know how much time we have left, but I want to make sure we had a couple other points to cover.
Yeah, I do.
One of the things that we see a lot, and I kind of alluded to this with the lady that I spoke to at first on January 2nd, and then he's just now getting to us on late August. A lot of times we tend to kick the can down the road as family members and loved ones and kind of just hope and pray and stick our head in the sand and just like that this stuff is just going to work its way out like magically. And that's one of the biggest struggles that Ben and I have to handle and deal with, is that like helping them come to the realization that this isn't gonna just go away. In fact, it's gonna get worse. And I have another example, and I'm not gonna use names, but it's a listener of the Mind Pump, and I've been talking to this family since February, and it's really sad from my seat to see where this is heading. And the situation that is happening right now is the husband is he's having a real hard time drawing boundaries with his wife, and he has a lot of guilt and a lot of shame, and he doesn't want to send his wife away for help, and it's very apparent that she needs it. And so the reason I want to bring that up is because from a family member's perspective, you have to do your best and do whatever you can to try and think logically through this. And that goes to the emotional side of it. Oftentimes we allow our emotions to dictate our next move, but a lot of times there is no next move. And it's just, I'm just going to stick my head in the sand and pretend that this isn't happening. And that's one of the most frustrating things, is because Ben and I know there is a solution here. We have the solution for you, and we're here to help you gain this, this solution. And for me, that's one of the biggest struggles that I have, is just this kicking the can down the road. I just want to, I've offered to some people, I'll literally fly to where you're at, facilitate an intervention, whatever we got to do, to get them here, because that's how strong I feel about it. But a lot of times family members and loved ones, they can't get out of their own way.
What Ben referred to something that, and it's like the third or fourth time on the podcast, I have forgotten the name. There's a term for it. And I've maybe Doug can help me find it, because I know I've done this before on the show, and I've got to memorize this because there's been so many times in conversation where, and I forget what it's called, but it's like where if something is close enough to walk, you'll walk to it, and then there's a distance that's just outside of that. Remember when I was trying to explain this? It's a
fallacy.
Yes,
paradox or something.
Yeah, it's a paradox, and it's like if something is within, you can walk. It's like, let's say a mile, and it takes you 20 minutes to walk it. You're gonna walk it, and then if it's 3 miles or 5 miles, you get in the car and drive. But if you're right at the 2.5, that's the paradox.
You're not motivated.
Yeah, you're not quite motivated to get in the car and go drive that way, and or whatever. Like, there's an actual term for this, but this is what you're talking about, is that it's not quite bad enough yet to get them to make a decision. We see this in fitness all the time. People are like, "Oh, I know I should get in shape," but it's like, it's the doctor hasn't told them they have a critical thing going on, or they haven't got obese or whatever, and so they're in this weird paradox where they don't move. And it would actually almost be better for them if it got really bad or worse. And I feel like there's probably that a lot with addicts is, it's bad, but it's not that bad. It's not bad enough yet where they've done something that's really scared us. And so I would imagine this is a problem where you get stuck in this paradox all the time, where it's not bad enough yet to make a move.
Well, there's a saying, we have the only disease that tells us we don't have it that has to be self-diagnosed.
Yeah, I got another one for you after he's done.
Here's the thing, it doesn't matter what any family or loved one is telling me. Until the day that I sit down and say, yes, I am an alcoholic and addict, and I diagnose myself. So, a lot of times families will go, the opposite of what Tom's saying, putting their head in the dirt. They'll just go directly at them and give them all these speeches, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
At the end of the day, this is what we do. Guys like Tom and I, who are addict alcoholics through and through, self-diagnosed, we are uniquely qualified to help. Because until I had an understanding that the guy sitting in front of me understood what I was talking about, the conversation was going nowhere. So as a loved one, if I have a loved one barking at me that my alcoholism addiction is a problem, I'm going to give you every justification in the world as to why it's not.
Yeah.
What we do on our end, I'll sit in front of an alcoholic and addict, and I'm going to tell you about my problem. And then I'm going to wait for you to tell me you have the same thing through relating, so to speak, rather than me coming at you and saying, I will never, ever go to somebody and say, you're an alcoholic, you are a drug addict. I 1000% never do that. I allow them to tell me through telling them about myself.
Is that why at the AA meetings, like the famous way you introduce yourself always is by saying, "I am Adam, I'm an alcoholic," or what like that? Is that part of the? Is that the reason? Is like they need to practice saying to themselves, they're admitting that they are. Is that why that's been a process? Like, because I've seen, is that not true? Is that not happen?
Yeah, that's not true, because it's actually the only required for membership is a desire to stop drinking.
Yeah.
So by calling yourself an alcoholic, you're basically qualifying yourself to be at that meeting with everybody.
Okay.
It's more of a qualification thing.
Yeah.
But it's funny you bring it up, because a lot of people hear that and they're like, I'm not going to sit in a meeting and call myself an alcoholic. That's like admitting defeat, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that pissed me off to no end when I was first getting sober, you get some like old dude with like 20 years of sobriety. He would sit down and say, I'm a grateful recovered alcoholic. And I'm like, grateful for this? Yeah. Like, what are you talking about? Where prior, I didn't want to call myself an alcoholic. Today, I am grateful, and I'm not afraid to shout it out through the hilltops. I'm an alcoholic. Why? Because as we discussed earlier, I look at it as a superpower now. Going back to, thank God I crossed that line, completely reevaluated my life, started living my life in a different way. We call it a design for living, so to speak. So essentially, like, we're not teaching you how to get off of drugs and alcohol. We're teaching you how to live life to the point where you don't need it.
So I forget what you said. But
It's a disease that you have to.
yeah, there's and I got it, Ben. You ready for this?
Yeah.
When the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of change, will change.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you were alluding to.
Yeah. Doug looked it up, but it's called a different paradox, and that's
Missing the middle.
You know what I'm talking about, don't you guys?
I remember hearing
yeah, there was a great interview that Chris Williamson did with somebody, and they talked about it, and it is a paradox, but it's similar to what you're trying to find, but that's the point right there.
Can you logic an addict into recovery? Can you sit down and just break down the facts?
Ben, I feel like we're going to have a differing of opinion here. So
You go first then.
Okay. I don't think you can logic it, no. I do think when I'm talking to family members and loved ones, and Adam, you alluded to this a little bit, I'm always looking for leverage points. Can I logic somebody into recovery? No, but I can leverage them. And the reason I say that is because you oftentimes hear this, oh, well, there's no point in going through all this if they don't want to get clean and sober. If they don't even think that there's a problem, then what's the point in even doing any of this? Well, that's like me saying, I don't necessarily believe, I don't believe the doctors that I'm a diabetic, so I'm just going to keep eating the way that I'm eating.
Right.
I'm just not going to do anything. No, it's silly. When I went into treatment, I didn't want to go into treatment. I didn't want to do any of that stuff. I was kind of strong-armed into it through leverage points. The people around me that cared about me the most, that loved me when I couldn't love myself, said, look, you have options here. Just one is going to be a lot more uncomfortable than the other. You can either be homeless and you can figure out how to live your life moving forward, or you could hop on an airplane and take a one-way flight to Florida. The choice is entirely yours. And fortunately, I chose to go to Florida and get treatment. So it is in a way like I was leveraged in, but I used my own logic to think that, okay, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go to treatment for 45 days and I'm going to return back to Pennsylvania and I'm going to drink like a gentleman. That's honestly what I thought I was going to do. And so this is where I push back on people that say, well, if they don't want it, there's no point in trying. That's the biggest line of BS. Because when I entered into the treatment process and I got surrounded by people like Ben and like every other man that had sobriety time that I didn't have, I became a product of my environment. Right. And, it's you show me your friends, I'll show you your future. You are the average of the sum of the 5 people you hang around with and stuff like that. I didn't want to go to treatment. I didn't want to get sober. I didn't have a choice, though, in the sense. But I put myself in the center. And by doing that, seeds were being planted.
Okay.
And then I started to see, I can do this. And I did.
Short answer, logic, no. There's a line in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous that says, logic is great stuff. We like it. We still like it. But logic only got us so far. And what I'll elaborate on is a guy like me, consequences are that's not what classifies me as an addict and alcoholic. Consequences won't keep me sober. I mean, I've met people who have 7 DUIs, right? Or they've overdosed 5, 10 times. And they're like, haven't you had enough consequences? Consequences don't do it. What it has to be, I believe, through my experience, for any addict alcoholic, is an internal spiritual bottom. When I'm completely spiritually broken, internally broken, is when I make the decision to turn my will and my life over, right? Like, the logic thing doesn't work. It was until that day where inside I just knew I couldn't go on any longer the way that I was. And there's something that we talk about. There's 2 options. We can die an alcoholic junkie death or accept spiritual help, right? And if you're a guy like me, a lot of times neither one sounds good. It's like a dilemma.
Right.
A dilemma is like 2 kids are drowning. I can only save one, right? But I'm at that fork in the road. I have to make a decision. Like, I'm going to continue on blotting out my existence the best I can that's intolerable, or I'm going to accept spiritual help. And what that looked like for me at the time was just saying to myself, I can't do this on my own. I need somebody else's help. I used somebody else's plan. My sponsor would always say to me, Ben, you know what makes a good plan? I'm like, what, Freddie? He's like, a plan that's not yours, right? Any plan of mine is doomed to fail. And, you know, the funny thing is, and speaking to my own personal journey, I found God when I wasn't even looking for God. All I wanted to do was quit drugs and alcohol. But for me, working 12 steps, and there's all other avenues people can take. I'm not like 12 steps has a monopoly on sobriety. That's not the case. I see people get sober all kinds of ways. But for me, I ended up working these things called 12 steps that are spiritual in nature, and they're very palatable, right? Like, I simply, admit that I've been defeated. I'm paraphrasing these. Admit that I've been defeated. I take a moral inventory of myself. The word moral means truth. So I'm taking a good, deep, hard look at who I really am. And then I get to find all those negatives, those shortcomings, those character defects. And I have to ask myself, am I really willing to cast those out? Because to call it what it is, I had a street survival kit. Lying, manipulating, stealing, all that stuff kept me alive at one point, right? I was able to get my drugs because of those things. Do I really want to get rid of them? But again, coming back to that spiritual bottom, I can either cast this out or hang on to it and continue doing what I'm doing. And, I look at it like this. I always talk about the 12-step, which is having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. We try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs, right? So every step that I worked gave me an opportunity to have what I refer to as a spiritual experience. If I have enough of these spiritual experiences, I will eventually have a spiritual awakening where it's become permanent, right? And here's the thing. A lot of times I was told, I would be told even in sobriety circles, Ben, don't give up before the miracle happens, right? I'm a guy who was jamming a needle in my arm up to 50 times a day, and all of a sudden one day I made it 24 hours without doing that. Here I was waiting for a miracle. The miracle already occurred. What I came to realize is God had already intervened. It was impossible for me to stop, and then somehow I made it 24 hours. I couldn't explain it. I couldn't tell you what was different. But what ends up happening, I worked these 12 steps. Working 12 steps or working any recovery program doesn't get you to the point where a miracle happens. It gets you to the point, it wakes you up to the miracle that already occurred.
I see.
Right? And that's where my spirituality grew. And I ended up finding a God of my own understanding that I now rely on. And going back to that purpose card I was talking about earlier, now just carrying that message. And I believe that's God's will for me. The word will means future plans. There's no doubt in my mind that God had a plan for me to continue to help other alcoholics and addicts. And that's where I find my purpose today. And that's the way that God speaks to me. And that's what I feel in my heart. Longest journey I ever took was from my head to my heart. right? I was trying to figure out this whole God thing. And at the end of the day, I end up sitting down with my sponsees and I read them the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. We're both breaking down in tears. I'm like, why the hell are we crying? We're hugging each other. And in that moment, a man who felt useless, who had nothing to contribute to the world, all of a sudden I realized in that moment, I'm like, here I've been trying to figure God out in my head when God just showed up in my heart in that moment. You know, and it's, so it, answer your question, logic will only get you so far with this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So well said.
Yeah, good. Well, God bless you guys. Thank you so much for what you guys do. And I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you reaching out, letting me know when people, you know, of course, with their permission are coming through. And it's super, super encouraging for us.
Yeah, I just want to do a couple homework items before we wrap this up. I do want to shout out the detox. So our program, we don't do detox, right? So that's going to be your first 7 to 10 days, right? When you're kicking whatever it is. So there's a detox facility right by us. It's called Haven Detox. They're the ones that have really come to the calling of anybody that we get, you know, from Mind Pump listeners and stuff like that, that they're doing the scholarships. So, and just to put a frame of reference, detox is not cheap. You're looking at about $10,000 for a 10-day detox. And as we are sitting here, I got confirmation from, and he won't care if I use his name. His name is Clifford. Next Thursday, he's flying into Palm Beach International at 9:30 p.m.
Okay.
And he's the guy with the liver transplant.
Oh, wow.
He sent me his flight itinerary.
Oh, good
so
stuff.
he's coming next week.
Beautiful.
And so he'll go to Haven. He'll go there 7 to 10 days. And then he'll get over to us and he'll be with us for 6 months and then hopefully get that liver.
All right.
And the only other thing that I want to do is just, you know, talk about our podcast. Like this, it's really, we've been doing it for 8 years. And
Has it been 8 already now?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I love it. You know, it's something that gives me joy. It gives all of us joy, myself, Ben, Dr. Tambini, because Dr. Tambini is an addictionologist. So we often refer to ourselves as just two bozos on the bus, me and Ben, right? We're not doctors. We have the experience, and Dr. Tambini has the medical side of it. If you're a family member or loved one, like, go there and just start consuming this stuff. And no matter where you're at on the journey, you're going to get something out of it. And then we recently started, about 8 weeks ago, we started what it's called the Family Reconnect program. And so what we're doing is every Tuesday night at 6:00, we go live with the members of the Family Reconnect program. And right now I think we have 15 or 16 moms. It's all women. It doesn't have to be. It's just the way that it's shaping out because men generally don't want to talk about this stuff. Moms, spouses, girlfriends, you know, coming on, have access to myself, Ben, Dr. Tambini, other experts in this field, and just giving them support, direction, guidance, and stuff like that. And it's been phenomenal. I mean, it's for us, it's great. So it's every Tuesday night, 6:00 Eastern time is when we go. And that's at realrecoverytalk.com/FRC for details on that.
That's awesome.
So, thanks.
Yeah, I love
Thank
that.
you so much for
Awesome.
on. Yeah, this has been great. Again, we appreciate you guys a lot.
Thank you.
Keep doing it, man.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
All right, I know you liked that episode. If you did, check this one out. Stop doing 3 sets of 12 to build muscle and do this instead. You guys want to guess?
Stop doing the 3 sets of 12 and do this instead. With that intro, my guess is you're going to tell people to change the rep range
5
up
by
to 5 by 5 or low rep range.
Do you guys remember
the
when
angle you're going?
Yeah, so oftentimes we get stuck in like a set count and a rep count or a range that's